Are you ready to dive deep into the intersections of technology, law, and business? Catch the Tech Intersect podcast on our new Advantage Evans YouTube channel. Whether you're connecting on the go or binging episodes from the comfort of your home, you'll never miss a moment again. Plus, you'll experience all types of exciting shorts, special events content, breaking news lives, and the comprehensive learning series. Subscribe today, hit the bell for notifications, and enjoy podcast videos and more. Use the link or search for Advantage Evans on YouTube to find our channel so you can watch, learn, and engage where insider meets impact. See you there.
You want to have all of the benefits of the technology without losing a sufficient amount of privacy. That being said, we have to have a structure that also protects folks as well. That's part of the responsibility of having a sufficient amount of information and education to make more well-informed choices and decisions in the space, for sure. Welcome to Tech Intersect. I'm your host, Tanya Evans, and my life and work exist at the heart of law, business, and technology. Yeah, I've earned a few fancy titles and degrees over the years, but the bottom line is I'm a writer, speaker, teacher, and lifelong learner, and I'm really excited that you've joined me on this journey. So what is Tech Intersect? Well, it's authentic, empowering conversations with really interesting guests who demystify complex topics to prepare you for the future, because your future is now. And it exists where law, business, and tech intersect. Get ready to listen, learn, and leverage. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to this very special episode of the Tech Intersect Podcast. We are knee-deep in the middle of a special series titled Digital Money Demystified, named after the title of my book due out on October 24th. And I wanted to do something special to involve some of the folks who I have the greatest admiration and esteem for, those who have known me in the space for as long as I've been in it, actually, since back in 2017, some real thought leaders and thoughtful people that I could engage not only in conversation with, but actually hand over my microphone to them so that they could engage with me to help me demystify the space for you. And that's why I'm so excited to have Sandra Ro on, a leading advocate for what we call human-centric tech. Definitely been at the forefront of the crypto and digital assets movement as an early investor. So definitely an OG in the space to be sure. She is the CEO of the Global Blockchain Business Council. I'm an observing member of GBBC. She oversees the world's premier Swiss-based nonprofit association dedicated to the blockchain sector. And to date, she will correct me when we get into conversation, but at least 500 institutional members worldwide. Just been instrumental personally and professionally in shaping not only the trajectory of my career, but also, and this is not hyperbole, really the future of digital currency. And today we are going to focus on the myth of demystifying this notion that crypto is a complete wild, wild west, wholly unregulated. And there are some things that we can work on to fine tune the nuances of the space. You all know that I've done some testimony before Congress, and both Sandra and I have been working tirelessly to have clearer guidelines and guardrails, for lack of a better term. But we want to help demystify the space. And so we will talk about all of that and more in a moment. But first, welcome.
Thank you. And I have to say, I am so delighted anytime I get a chance to spend some time with you. So I appreciate it. And what's even better is I get to turn the mic on you. And
Exactly. And it makes me think of one of the first times I still remember when we got together and we were in New York and sharing a plate of food. I think it was it's probably brunch, or I just remember brunchy food. I can't remember where we were, but it was a beautiful little place where we could really get to know each other even better. And you've been just so instrumental in helping me forge my own path. So I thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I think one thing you've highlighted just there before we get into all the questions is the community. And I don't think people understand how actually most of this digital asset crypto community are some of the most giving, kind, wonderful, bright
Mm-hmm.
people, because it's very easy just to talk about the negativity and the bad actors. I just want to underscore, had it not been for the advent of crypto and digital assets and blockchain, I would have never met you, Tanya.
Absolutely.
Never ever traveled this journey together.
Thank you, crypto. Thank you, Satoshi.
Getting into now the brass tacks of why we're here. I want to start off with just what you mentioned before, the myth of there's no regulation, crypto is Wild West. Why is this narrative, do you think, so pervasive even today?
It's interesting because I often think the narrative around cryptographically secured assets, and we know there's just thousands and thousands of different types, right? Each, because crypto is programmable, not just money, but an asset, fundamentally really changes the nature of how people can even understand it. That coupled with the fact that we're still in the early innings here, even though Bitcoin came on the scene with a gangster lien back in January of 2009, things are very early and the narrative is being framed oftentimes by the headlines. Our conversation right now, we're talking on October 4th. This is the second day, if I'm not mistaken, of the Sam Bankman-Fried trial, for example. And that is dominating the headlines. And it's a very, very important story. What you and I understand also very clearly is what he's charged and alleged to have done is a fraud issue, not a crypto issue. And any time that you have a lot of money at stake, you're going to have bad actors in the space. This should be no exception, but we have to be clear about separating fact from fiction. There's so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt that comes head on with fear of missing out. And not a good bridge in between, again, to separate fact from fiction. And if people say it enough and you see in the headlines and people even in legislative and regulatory positions say it, there's not enough of the counter narrative, not to sell anything, but to right size the conversation. And that's why I spend so much of my time, and I know you do as well, trying to at least set the stage and the framework for what is true, what is not, what normatively should be, and what is, and kind of how to get there. So there's just so much mis and disinformation. And the final point is probably a lack of clarity about where to turn for sound, prudent information and advice so that people can make more well-informed decisions.
Absolutely. Sometimes there's almost too much information and it can be overwhelming. And I think Tanya, give us an example of existing regulatory frameworks or, an example of where you've seen in the world where this stuff has actually come in and it's viable, it is actually in place. Because I think the audience would appreciate that too, right? Because there's some regulation in place around the world.
Absolutely. Well, we even start here in the United States, and I'm glad you said around the world, because there's such a myopic focus here in the United States to the exclusion of the rest of the world. Right. And in fact, oftentimes in contracts, we just see ROW. It's like, that's kind of rude, but that's a story for another day. Yeah. This idea that even here in the United States, now we have a very complex system. We have a complex system. It makes me think, obviously, we would focus on the Securities and Exchange Commission, Commodities Futures Trade Commission as well. So SEC, CFTC, but we also have the Department of Justice. We have the IRS. We have existing rules, regulations, and laws that have stood the test of time. They might bend and they might be behind the times, but the law that's a feature, not a bug. The law intentionally lags behind the innovation of technology, and we have what we have until we have something different. So in answer to your question, we have a structure and a test from a Supreme Court point of view to determine whether or not something functions as a security or an investment contract. We have a set of rules and laws and norms and definitions for what would constitute a commodity. We have a laundry list of laws, asked Sam Bankman-Fried, of things where there might be misappropriation of funds or misleading investors. There are a whole range of things where, and it reminds me to also make the point that existing rules and laws, regulations need to focus on activity and actions and actors, not the technology. I feel like so often we come up against that. That's an important point here because again, we have the intersection of technological advancements that are directly implicating and impacting finance. Kind of like the same technology that we use, obviously, for the earlier iterations of the internet. We have peer-to-peer technology where the messaging used to be related to media files. Now we're using the same layer of technology to exchange value. That contemplates both existing rules and laws, but also in full transparency, it's not necessarily a neat fit. You've had a lot of, and because of your illustrious background in finance, and I'm thinking like of the SEC at this moment, a lot of exotic products and the structure really coming from the 40s has somehow managed to keep up. I think if we were starting today, we might have something that is completely different because the nature of programmable assets is challenging the system. But we do have a lot of existing rules, laws, and norms that already exist.
Well, you raise an excellent point about there are a lot of existing rules and regulatory requirements, and some of them do not fit neatly into this new wave of technologies and financial products that are digitized. And what really comes to mind kind of leads to my next question to you. KYC AML, for anyone who doesn't know, it's know your client, anti-money laundering requirements. These things are now being applied across the board around the world again. But, let's stick with the US. The question I have to you is, how is that impacting crypto assets operators? And do they fit? And where do they not fit?
Yeah, this is a really important point because from the KYC AML point of view, those laws and requirements to have a sufficient amount of information for the government to track nefarious actors, to avoid all sorts of other things. And you and I are very committed to that. Obviously, I'm an attorney. I'm a law professor. When I think of the year of the crypto contagion, this has done us no favor. I mean, we could go all the way back to the DAO. We were always going to have these moments in time. But the important part of having certain rules is impacting. I'm struggling to categorize how it might be. I think the more information that is required from a financial point of view touches upon financial privacy issues that comes up against the ethos and the spirit from a cypherpunk perspective, from a libertarian point of view, that privacy does not equal illegality, and what the optimal balance is to protect consumers and investors and a range of other things while also not overreaching so much that we lose the same financial privacy that we would have if we were exchanging cash, right? I know that comes up a lot with central bank digital currencies, for example, and that conversation here in the United States and around the world is top of mind because you want to have all of the benefits of the technology without losing a sufficient amount of privacy. That being said, we have to have a structure that also protects folks as well. And so that's part of the responsibility of having a sufficient amount of information and education to make more well-informed choices and decisions in the space, for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And your whole point about, the struggles that we're having around individual privacy versus doing the right thing, which is to, not allow for bad actors to take advantage of people and scam them and all of that. I think we're all pretty much in agreement that that's something we need to prevent. However, that dialogue to me seems to be something that's actually happening in other jurisdictions as well. And I was just wondering, can you talk a little bit about maybe where other countries have adopted crypto or adapted to crypto in a different way and just some of the things that you've seen highlighted that you'd like to highlight, I should say?
Yeah, it makes me think of areas, makes me think of the Bahamas. It makes me think of Singapore. There's a lot of forward-thinking progress in various areas in Europe, for example. It makes me think of Zug, Switzerland, which is like
Yes.
Crypto Valley, right?
Nobody knew what Zug was before.
No one ever. And it's still my soul thing. It's like on a short-term crypto bucket list. I got to get there. I got to get to Davos and I got to get to, you right?
Oh, well, let's make it happen in January.
Excellent. Okay.
Right.
Deal. It makes me think of other areas. It makes me think of Bermuda to some extent. There's so many countries and it doesn't make it easier. I think this is the other thing when people say, oh, well, this is accepted in a particular country. That doesn't mean that it's easy to navigate. It means it's clear.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And you know, Tanya, Premier Burt of
1000%.
Bermuda would be the first to tell you it is not going to be easy to just do business in Bermuda just because they have rules.
That's right. It makes it clear because the cost of doing business becomes too speculative. It becomes too dangerous as a matter of, managing risk. Oddly, like a crypto company that is in an exchange, for example, that is invested in doing everything that it should, it's much easier clearly to do when you have the clear rules of the road and either you play or you don't. And that's what I remember testifying before the House Financial Services Subcommittee on Digital Assets back in March or April of this year, 2003, and making this precise point. My concerns with the SEC, for example, and we've heard this over and over again, regulating by enforcement, which ends up being singling out a particular actor, suing them and having a particular result that really only applies to that actor. But the rest of the industry is left to guesstimate to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars on some occasion to try to do the right thing without knowing fully, only to get, you get invited in, come on, just want to talk to you. And now that we've talked to you, now we're going to sue you, right? Who has time for that when this technology is moving quickly? We're losing, now speaking from a United States perspective, a standing, because this is moving forward. People will move their businesses to err on the side of caution, to engage in business in other countries that make at least the rules clear. So the danger of losing that position of being a first mover, I feel like we have about 6, 8, 12 months, 18 tops. And if we don't get it together here, then we'll be trying to get business back like we did with semiconductor chips.
And I think the whole concept of being on the back foot, because you had regulatory uncertainty, you've already kind of answered my next question, which is what does regulatory uncertainty do to a group of entrepreneurs or to an industry or to a country?
Right.
Well, you just said it.
Absolutely.
It's you at a disadvantage.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody, stop what you're doing and mark your calendars. On October 24th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Eastern, we are celebrating the launch of my forthcoming book, Digital Money Demystified, with a free virtual event hosted by best-selling author Minda Harts, also one of my best friends. Expect electrifying presentations, deep dive interviews, unbelievable giveaways, and some surprise guests will come through. For those craving an even richer future of wealth experience, there's more. On the eve of the launch, we've curated the VIP Launch Eve experience. Dive into intimate conversations, enjoy exclusive access to pioneering digital money content, engage in transformative coaching, and be a part of a vibrant community. Not to mention the swag that awaits. So 2 events, 2 transformative experiences. Choose your journey as long as you're on this journey with me. Reserve your spot now at advantageevans.com/activate. That's advantageevans.com/activate. This is your chance to be at the forefront of the digital money revolution. Don't miss out. Join me for your first mover advantage. It's interesting when I think about the system of government here in the States, and we have the legislative body charged with the task of creating the framework through legislative enactments, actually create and empower agencies in the second branch of government. So that's why I spend so much time focused on Congress to either update existing legislation. Is it Creating a new agency also would have to happen through legislative initiatives. Do we have tighter grips on the regulatory state? I don't think that we should cast, a wide net on that, meaning that each agency is a bit different. And the whole point of having an agency is that you have subject matter experts there to be the kind of the mortar to the bricks set by legislators. But at the end of the day, we also have the judicial branch. And there have been a couple of wins. That makes me think of the Ripple suit. It makes me think of Coinbase, where I feel like it's like Star Wars. It's like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our only hope. And that fall that resides with the judicial branch. And so we're seeing things work themselves out. One final point I intended to say earlier, with some of the countries that we've named, they don't have the legislative and regulatory morass, the ABCs, right? To have to, even on the legislative side, there are committees and subcommittees just battling for control, where you can have a smaller country or one with one regulator. It makes it more easy for them to be nimble and to pivot. So, I offer that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we touched upon this, that consumer protection is really important. And I don't think there are that many people who want average people, to be taken advantage of. However, how do you think the regulatory environment, or maybe the lack thereof, has impacted consumers getting into crypto? And then obviously, where do you think we go with this? Do we need more protection?
I feel like the myth of the area being completely unregulated, coupled with a lack of clear guidance from the government, it makes me think of like the executive order that came down from President Biden last year, where agencies then followed up to quote unquote issue these reports after their fact-finding mission. I don't think we were any better off at the end of the process than before. That leaves folks with very few choices. You have to be very proactive. And like us, to spend our time fully immersed in this. Most people are not going to spend that level of time or commitment because they just don't have the time. There's so much going on in the world. I definitely think it is negatively impacting consumers because it lends itself to greater fear. So the uncertainty from a commercial point of view also translates into the narrative, again, that consumers hear. There's a lot of interest. A lot of people got wrecked when they were participating in FOMO. Everything, it was crypto all the time. It was on every commercial. And there was a lot of get rich quickly without all of the information. So having a bad experience coupled with this myth, I think it is really dampening enthusiasm and increasing fear. Final point, I think that it always ebbs and flows with the price of Bitcoin, which kind of is the rising tide. So it makes me think of, let's have this conversation again next year when we have the halving event for Bitcoin. It's at the end. I'm not making any predictions. It's not legal or financial advice.
Right.
It passed its prologue. It will be interesting to see the energy and the life cycle of the crypto economy into 2024, 2025. And if past its prologue, you see another pump in the price, you'll see all those people start to come back again. But I don't know that they'll have any better of a time navigating without sound strategic advice and tools and resources to help them make better decisions.
You love listening to podcasts, but have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Maybe you want to build a brand, grow your business, or are looking for an excuse to talk about your favorite hobby. Whatever your reason for making a podcast, Buzzsprout is the place to start. Since 2009, Buzzsprout has helped over 300,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout walks you step by step through the whole process and will give you powerful tools to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. Ready to get started? Click the link in the show notes to get our free step-by-step guide to starting your podcast today.
That's the key, I think, is the education piece on people being able to get good information to be able to make decisions for themselves.
Right.
And I mean, Tanya, that's literally what you do in your day to day and beyond. So I think it's really important that we lead with education first, which also got me to another point, thinking around how this all started. And it was a grassroots movement in many ways. And decentralization is a concept that is very much embedded in the ethos of anyone in this space. How do we reconcile that with regulation and sort of concentrated ports of power and control? And, how do you get that old way of regulating, meshing with a world where things are automated, smart contracts, but also there's less of this central command and control?
I actually think that point can be quite challenging and frightening to folks. And what I've learned about myself and about finances, like forget crypto for a second, that I can't talk about the future of money and of wealth without examining what my own money myths are, right? How was I raised, part nature, part nurture, around my relationship to money and to wealth, and what it means to be my own bank or manage my own money. That is very challenging to folks, to be sure. I think that is another headwind as we lean in to educate people about crypto and blockchain technology, smart contracts, the automation that makes things better, faster, cheaper. So many benefits there, but we lose a lot of people when we focus first on the technology. We have a financial technology innovation, but we don't have to start with hash rates and block sizes and scaling and shards and layer, blah, 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 right?
Like half the audience right there.
Go on. I hope you're all still listening now that I've got that out of the way.
Don't go away. Yeah.
You just can't get there. I know I couldn't. That's why, when I was sitting down to research Digital Money Demystified, I had to, and I'm a very private person, but I wanted to include anecdotes of my own experience, the lessons and the blessings for me losing seed words for about 3 years. And there was like a half a Bitcoin and some maker out in the world that I couldn't find. Like I made every wrong move on my way to self-determination, autonomy, learning the language, the sense of community that you mentioned, particularly early on, but even now, there are a lot of loud voices and things got a little funky, a little weird. The common element was for the greater good of the community. And I still think that exists for sure. But it takes community even more because of the decentralized and distributed nature of the technology. Like underneath it all, it doesn't exist without community. Prices don't rise and fall without community. Innovation doesn't move forward without community, right? Like that's the whole point of it, which is a very different system from the hyper competitive model on which existing traditional notions of traditional finance are based, right? It's like a fundamental shift at every layer that moves more toward collaboration, neatly paired with autonomy. Like that's one of the things I get really excited about. I think that you do as well. Like it's this interesting intermingling of both autonomy, but community.
Yes. And someone once said to me, can't make the attribution because I don't really know who said it to me, but this is a movement as much as it is a technology. And the movement part is what most people don't recognize. And it is about that community with an ethos and a shift in mindset, which is really hard for some folks. And I get it. Tanya, I want to just really kind of wrap up here with one question to you that is more forward leaning. You're not making predictions on prices. I'm not going to do that. But when you look out into the next year, next couple years, what are some of your predictions around where the regulatory landscape may land? And please, would love to get some of your thoughts.
This is so fascinating because here I might lean toward a few predictions. Now we are entering into a presidential cycle.
Yes.
We are just off the heels of the the vacancy of the speakership on the House side. There's a lot of political uncertainty and unrest, hyper partisan activities. It can make it very challenging to pass anything, particularly in a presidential cycle.
Yes.
But I've been encouraged, at least with this last cycle, about continued bipartisan efforts. I really just feel like even though this space has become partisan, like the democratic principles with a little d, not a particular leaning for any political party, but the democratic principles of community matched with self-determination is really, really important. My hope is, because I don't think we are still having the conversation in 2023 where we are always talking about what is this and like, trying to teach legislators and regulators. There are enough people who know enough. It makes me think of the blockchain caucus, and there are enough people who know. I just had a meeting with a counsel from Secretary Yellen's office and Treasury. Like, there are a lot of people having sophisticated conversations. So it's like, what's the next point is, all right, if we're not solely focused on education, now we're in the what's in it for me / my constituency conversation. Right. And for that, I feel like that is a nonpartisan area that gives an opportunity to make consistent language, like the taxonomy in the space is critically important. So that we're all talking about apples and apples and oranges and oranges, that we see that there's a win-win, not only for business, but for people. That's a rare opportunity to find a topic like that. I think that is this. I've spoken to super progressive folks. I worked with Maxwell Frost when he was running and, talking to the McHenrys of the world. Like, this is one of those common ties that bind. So my prediction and my hope is that there will be a more of a common thread here than we could see across the board from a lot of topics. And that gives me hope. Particularly final point with the judiciary kind of pushing back on some of the regulatory steps or missteps, in my humble opinion, that will help them to reconcile something that is more workable, that provides confidence in the community, in the ecosystem, and for people.
Amazing. And I think we will have no shortage, particularly in the US, of waiting and seeing, but also actively engaging. And I think that's also the key. We have to actively engage on the future that we want and not let it be dictated for us. And I'm so glad that you are doing the work that you are, your book. Everyone should go read it and reach out to Tanya if you want to learn more.
Sandra Ro, thank you so very much for joining me. This is the continued conversation that we have. It's a pleasure to be nation building with you and moving toward this more perfect globe, because this is the work that we're doing together.
I think we can either recreate the same concentrations of power, or we can decide as a collective to actually widen the pie and include more people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tech Intersect podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you love it, please tell the world. If not, go ahead and tell me. And in either case, drop a comment or ping me on social media at IPProfEvans with the hashtag Tech Intersect. And finally, a quick reminder on digital safety. There are a lot of scammers out there impersonating me and others, and I need your help. Now hear this, and remember, I will never slide into your DMs to say peace and blessings or hey, and I will never reach out to solicit your time or your money on social media, like ever. I'm not a trader. I am an educator and an attorney licensed in 4 states. Thank you very much. I'm here to inform, inspire, and empower. No cap, and definitely no Forex. So be careful, make good choices, and remember, I developed an entire free masterclass about the topic of digital safety in the crypto space. So check out secureyourcryptobag.com for more information. That's secureyourcryptobag.com. All right, That's all for this episode. Until next time, continue to shine. Hey there, Tech Intersect listeners. Have you ever encountered naysayers claiming crypto is too volatile, a total scam, or a hacker's paradise? Well, it's time to dispel these persistent myths and reveal the truth. It's exactly why I wrote Digital Money Demystified, available now wherever books are sold. And this book is your golden ticket from being crypto curious to radiating crypto confidence. Navigate the crypto world with clarity and conquer the chaos. Get your copy today to learn about my journey, separate fact from fiction, and maybe even embark on a transformative journey yourself. Don't stop there. Enhance your learning experience exponentially. Join the DMD Insiders Membership Club. It's a gateway to premier coaching, engaging community, and unparalleled content that complements the insights in the book. Together, we'll unlock the potential of digital money and stride confidently into the future. Visit digitalmoneydemystified.com, grab your guide to the crypto universe, and become an esteemed member of our Insiders Club. Let's decode the digital dollar and invest in your crypto-savvy future right now.